Good morning and welcome to the council meeting for November 5th, 2020. I'll have the clerk call us to order.
Councillor Berry.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Present.
Councillor Shortreed.
Present.
Mayor Moffat.
I am present. May I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the agenda today? Our short agenda, don't worry, there's lots coming down the road. Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council approves the November 5th, 2020 regular council meeting agenda as circulated.
All in favor? It's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder for the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Berry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that the October 15th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Public meetings, number 6, there are none. Number 7, delegations, there's one, and it's Mr. March, County's IT Director. I believe we'll just take a moment to bring him into the meeting. Good morning, Mr. March.
Morning, Mayor Moffat.
You have 2 things to discuss with us today, both a bit meaty.
Yes.
So I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. So again, good morning, Mayor Moffat and members of council. Today I am presenting a draft video surveillance policy for your consideration. I started developing this video surveillance policy after our IT department began receiving requests to investigate video surveillance systems at both the county and our local municipalities. Obviously, due to the sensitive nature of collecting video surveillance in public areas, the risk of data breaches, improper usage, etc. I wanted to ensure that there was a strong policy and process framework in place before we proceeded with any of these projects. So the policy that is before you today is very similar to what was passed by County Council this past June. And in developing this policy, the IT department, we referenced numerous policies from other Eastern Ontario municipalities. And we also included best practices that we gathered from the Information Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. In fact, all the items listed under the guiding principles section of this policy, basically what governs how the policy is structured, all came directly from the IPC. We took our policy and we had it reviewed by the county's legal counsel, who came back and found it to be a well-crafted policy and didn't find any issues with it. That letter has been attached for your reference as well. I've attached the policy, the appendices, and as well as some background information for anybody who wanted a bit of light reading. So at this point, I can review the policy section by section if that is council's desire. Otherwise, I'd be happy to take questions about any of the provisions in that policy.
I would say the council's had access to the policy for a number of days now, so I would say we just go to questions and any rationale or thoughts from council on the policy that's been presented. It has been adopted by the county, and I believe it's being circulated through all the municipalities. So it's just a preventative measure. There's no intent at the moment to install cameras unless council wants to do that. That would then become a budget item. Or a further discussion, but for the moment, any questions of Mike on the policy or any of its background documentation? Anybody? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
So basically what this does is just prepare us if we decide that we need in any particular location to put a camera up.
Yes, and there has been a little bit of chatter throughout various municipalities here and there based on some problems that have occurred. And so you'll recall from the county table that exactly that there was a lot of work that was needed to be done ahead of it in terms of the IPC and making sure we get it right. You know, especially given some of the things that have been on the news recently about sort of data capture unknown data capture in shopping malls and things, people get pretty upset by that. So yeah, this is just to set the stage for when and if the time ever comes that the municipality feels that it needs to install cameras somewhere. It also does relate to the webcam we have at the airport, which is fixed on the runway for safety reasons. So that would be, yeah, it's just setting the stage. Other questions from any members of council on the surveillance policy? Councillor Dayu.
Not a question so much as a comment. I want to say that I continue to be so impressed by the integrity of the work of the county on IT and also in other departments. But you know, this is the policy we've got in front of us, and it's just beautifully crafted. As you know, privacy laws were written both to protect citizens, but also to foster good thinking in organizations who avail themselves of this sort of technology. And the policy sets out that the County of Haliburton has absolutely done that thinking and is making strong decisions that benefit both us as an organization as well as private citizens. And well done. It's a great document, and I'm proud to be affiliated with it.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, thanks, Jen. Any other questions or comments about this video surveillance policy? What I will ask is just a sort of a generalized poll is, does council want to know more about the possible installation of cameras, or does council, because that requires work from on the part of staff. We do have projects and priorities coming up and leading into budget. It's a bit onerous based on the amount of work that's gone into the policy development. So I just didn't know whether council actually is satisfied simply having a policy in case we need to implement something, or if this policy has led council to think that we might need to install any cameras anywhere. I'm personally okay with just having a policy just in case, but wanted to know what council thought. Councillor Dayu.
Very glad to have the policy, and would very much look to the CAO and staff to advise if and when they feel that that would support their feeling of security, being the ones who are most often in our public buildings. I would seek to take direction from staff in this case.
Yeah, fair enough. So is council okay with following that direction led by staff? Deputy Mayor Danielson?
The only thing that really pops into my mind is maybe somewhere in the entrance area of our main administration building. It seems that if ever there has been an unhappy camper who has showed up to to express displeasure about something, that it has more often been there than anywhere. Those are just my thoughts. I know that there have been several instances where staff have felt extremely uncomfortable based on some actions that have taken place. So that would be my thought, that maybe it's something that we should consider as far as costs, when we're looking at budgets.
And so would council be supportive of that suggestion? Because then if the answer is yes, then I would ask, do we just pass it back to the CAO to have staff have a look at that opportunity and see if it's if they believe it's warranted based on what Councillor Dayu has said, and if that's the particular hotspot based on what Deputy Mayor Danielson has said. So I'm looking for a yay or nay on further investigation at this point. I see one nodding head, and I see Lisa Berry's hand in the air. So I'm not sure if that's a definitive answer or not, but I'll leave it to the CAO to take that back and discuss with staff and bring something forward, whether it's a recommendation or not on that issue.
I think Lisa had a question.
Does Lisa have a question? Councillor Berry.
Well, I just wanted to ask this question before we get into the next item, just because I assume Mike March won't be staying with us for the duration. Does this have any impact on video recording of council meetings, or is this strictly for health and safety, basically?
Mr. March, go ahead, please.
The intent from my end anyway, from this policy, was more for video surveillance in publicly accessible places, not necessarily the recording of council meetings.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Berry?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll leave that with you, Angie, to talk that through and bring something back for us to look at. Mr. March, if you would take us through the second report.
Gladly. So the second report is it's a report on a draft IT acceptable usage policy. It's a much needed revision to the current IT policy that was, I believe, implemented, I want to say around 2015. And it's part of a broader set of IT policies that I want to bring forward to I've been bringing forward to the county, and I'm starting to make my way to the local municipalities. Due to the overhauling of our policy structure between the old policy and the new policy, it didn't really make sense to do a red line analysis between the two. And I know that councils usually prefer that. But what I've done instead is in the report, I've included a summary of all the major changes between the two versions. Just to bring another note, in that summary, it does reference an IT security policy, which I hope to bring forward for your consideration at your November 19th council. Again, I am more than happy to go through the policy section by section, or just to answer any questions that council may have.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know this has been another sort of meaty policy that has required some modernization. Things are changing all the time, certainly with social media and the expectation that just about anybody is available anytime to talk about anything. So it's timely indeed. Any questions from council on the IT acceptable usage policy? No, you're getting a clean sweep here today, Mike.
Excellent.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate the work on it. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling through. I don't think I had anything highlighted there. Okay, then if there are no further questions, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to accept these policies. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed, or Councillor Dayu, sorry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council received a delegation from Mike March, Director of IT, regarding a draft video surveillance policy and IT acceptable usage policy, and further the council directs a bylaw be tabled to adopt the said policies.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike.
He's
Oh, is he staying?
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
for the next one. Okay. Then you can stay. Number 9, administration business is the report to council about the live streaming equipment, and you're presenting.
Yes.
And Mike's just here for backup.
Yes.
Excellent. So take it away, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to thank Mike March as well for his assistance with the research and organizing and preparing this report on the equipment for the live streaming. The report identifies equipment required and costs associated should council wish to continue with live streaming council meetings when it's safe to open to the public. The cost outline cover the microphone system, it's wireless, the streaming camera, computer, software, and what staff is recommending assisted living device, also listening device be included for accessible purposes. Should council wish to continue with permitting Zoom participants for the delegations, for delegates, there could be an additional cost of up to $2,600 depending on which option council chooses, which is outlined in the report. Should council wish to move forward with the purchasing of the equipment, staff is recommending that it be purchased through the modernization funding. So at this time, Mike is here to assist with any of the technical questions and the options that are listed in the report. Council has any?
Okay, so there's 3 options have been presented, and I read them. So the first one would have the TV behind me here would have everybody's faces on them. Is that what we're saying? And the other option is not having that. Third option is having a separate TV somewhere that can't be seen. I mean, to me, it makes sense to have the faces there, but maybe that's too busy. I don't know. Mike, do you have any gems of wisdom on the 3 options that might help us along?
Sure. So yeah, the first option would have the yourself viewing Zoom on your computer, much like you're doing now, and then have the actual Zoom screen for the other 4 counselors and anyone else in attendance watching behind your head on the television. So I guess the only consideration there is how that might look for people viewing from home. Might look a little off, but maybe that's just an aesthetic preference that I have. If we were to do that, much like you do now, you would have to make sure that your mic is muted and that your volume is off so we don't get feedback. Option 2, we would just have that television turned off, and then anybody who's in the council chambers to attend the meeting would bring up Zoom on their own computer, and that assumes everybody has a computer, or we can provide a computer for them to access Zoom. In that situation, again, everybody has to make sure that their mics are off and that the the volume is off on their individual laptops, as the microphone system will be taking care of the audio. And if we have multiple sources of mics and speakers, we're going to get feedback loops, and it's going to be a bit of a mess if you're trying to follow along at home. And then the third option is we purchase another TV on a television cart. We roll it out basically in front of everybody, but behind the camera, so it's not cut on the stream. So when you're looking at the Zoom session, everybody's kind of looking at the camera. So people watching from home and anybody attending via Zoom, it kind of looks like council's looking at them, versus all council members kind of just looking at their TVs or looking behind behind the mayor at the TV. So I think just aesthetically and maybe functionally, the television option I would think would be the best. However, I do know that it is the one with an extra price tag on it.
What do you mean option 3?
Sorry, what did I say? I did mean option 3, yes.
You did mean, yeah. And yeah, in listening to you explain that, I was thinking, yeah, I think it would be difficult to have faces back here. Everybody we're now all used to looking at faces on our own screens. So, thoughts from council, questions from council, thoughts from council on which way to go. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm just wondering about, if we're looking at faces, how we deal with looking at or making the agenda itself available for viewing. Maybe I'm missing something here.
Go ahead, Mike.
Would that be viewing by members of council or viewing by people following from home?
Well, viewing by anyone, really, because I mean, that's what we use the television monitor for now, is to, put up different aspects of the agenda. I think there are times that it helps us if we're quickly moving back and forth discussing something and you want to look at a particular item, it's easier just to bring it up on the big screen than each of us scrambling on our computers to find it.
Yeah, I know that I've struggled a bit. I think we all have. I know people at various meetings, they have a laptop and an iPad or a second laptop, and they have all little faces on one screen and they have the agenda on the second. Not everybody has two devices. What I finally sorted out is on my screen right in front of me, I split them. So I make the Zoom screen short and wide, and all your faces are there in 2 rows. And then I pull the agenda screen down. So right now I'm looking at the agenda and I'm looking at faces. So you can do that. You can also share the screen. Now I can tell you personally in meetings that I've been on where the person running the system shares the screen, it doesn't allow you, now you've got half your screens taken up with what that person's put on the screen because they're screen sharing. It doesn't allow you to go and find something in your own notes. I mean, you still have the option of printing pieces of paper, but we want to find a way that allows us to focus on the meeting and not on managing our meeting. So, so I think I'd kind of defer to the recommendation of Mr. March. I don't mind spending a little bit of money to get it right so that we do the meetings well, so that we can focus on the meetings and that there is the most opportunity for the public to pay attention. The public can print an agenda. Like Liz, where do you have your agenda now? In front of you today, where's your agenda?
It's on my laptop beside me. So my desktop, I'm looking at everyone. The laptop is beside me, and I find that relatively easy to manage. The one thing about the whole system that, I hate to say this, Mike, but I really don't like the microphones that we've got at the county. But I realize that they're probably the best option, but I often wondered about some kind of system where they hung down from the ceiling, or
Mr. March, you've got a comment there?
So can I ask, what about the system, the current system we have at the county, that you would like to see improved, other than you would like it hanging down from the ceiling? Is that just so that it's not in your way? Is that so it's always on?
Yeah, I think both. That it's in the way, because we've all got a laptop and we've got papers, notebooks or whatever if we want to jot something down. So it's a lot on the desk, and then you have to remember to turn it on when you want to speak. And quite often there's a little bit, even here we have a little bit of a blip where we forget to unmute ourselves. And I'm not suggesting in any way that we replace what we've got at the county, but I'm just saying that it's not my favorite technology.
Mr. March?
Yeah, if I may, you are correct. You would have to hit the talk button to speak. And when we be streaming the meetings, if you do not hit talk, then your audio is not going to come through. So always on microphones are a bit of a double-edged sword. Yeah, you don't have to worry about hitting the talk button, but then it's going to pick up background and all the background noise. So if your neighbor is shuffling her papers, clicking her pen, that stuff's going to start getting picked up as well. I looked at some different options, and I was also sensitive of the fact that you also have the public water taps, and then cars may come up. So kind of sensitive to potential background noises. So a microphone that you can turn on and off is the best to kind of eliminate background noise that can kind of come across on the stream and interfere with the meeting. As inconvenient as it might be to have to hit that button on and off each time.
Councillor Dayu?
Do we really need, this is shifting back to the video issue, do we really need to stream the faces of all the participants in the council chambers itself? And the reason I ask that is that right now, when we've got a delegate, they will call in, and yes, we lose something by not seeing their face, but at the same time, it doesn't completely hamper our ability to have a conversation with them. And I just wonder if it's possible to, if it's, I guess I'm not really sure why we need to go to the additional length of putting those faces in council chambers, potentially at an added cost, when the voice seems to be sufficient for those few times that it happens. Am I missing something?
I'm not sure, because your question has made me look back at the options and think, have I misunderstood something? So I see your hand there, Liz. So Mike, can you clarify for us that if we purchased, so just imagine, everyone's familiar, I'm sitting in my chair in the council chambers. Directly in front of me is a staff person who's assisting in running the technology. I'm assuming that in her place would be the screen of where the delegate's face would be if somebody was participating that way, and that TV would also be linked so that on your own screens there'd be another face on the screen and it would be that delegate. Is that how that's supposed to work?
If I may, so on your own screen, so for everybody, assuming that all members of council are in the council chambers, and correct me if I'm not understanding your question, Councillor Dayu, you won't necessarily need to have Zoom on your laptops. So if we go with the TV on the cart, that is your visual. So that's kind of sitting in front of all council and everybody's kind of looking. We'd actually put the camera up on top, camera views you see the TV. If you want it to go, so is the question that you want it to go strictly to a audio solution for call-in for anybody who are going to attend, any delegates attending electronically, and do away with the video portion of it?
I think that's what she's asking. Jen, you want to clarify that?
Yes, half yes, half no. So if the delegate is showing their face to us as in-person council members in the same room, but the stay-at-home audience can't necessarily see them, is that necessarily a bad thing?
So
Go ahead, Mike.
so what the audience will see is, so with the software that we'll have on the streaming computer, it's going to kind of go back and forth where one scene will be, you'll see everyone in the the Algonquin Highlands Council chambers. You'll see that full screen. And then we would flip over when somebody is giving a delegation, we would then show the Zoom screen. And on that Zoom screen, we would have it so you would only see the 2 or 3 delegates on there. A good, and sorry, I should have put it in as a reference. If you take a look at how the city of Kawartha Lakes are doing their council meetings, that would be a good reference to kind of what I envision. So again, when you are in the council chambers, you will see the people on the screen as delegates. People at home will be able to see both the members of council in the council chambers and anybody who's attending via Zoom. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mike, may I ask then, being familiar with the room that the council chambers that I'm sitting in right now, if the camera is going to be, is there 2 cameras? Because there's one camera that's back there to look at council, and council's supposed to use that TV cart to see the delegate. Where is the TV cart going to sit? Directly in front of me or over here beside me?
The TV and the cart would be directly in front of you. If council decides to go with option 3, what we could do, rather than mounting the camera on the wall, we can actually mount the camera right on the TV. So then there's no risk of the TV getting caught on the camera. So the TV will be positioned in such a way that it'll get a good view of the council chambers. So anybody watching from home, when we're on that shot, so to say, you'll just see a full shot of the Algonquin Highlands Council chambers.
Yeah, because one of the challenges, I've only been on a couple of the meetings, and Mike, you've been on them, the rail trail meetings at the county, and using the camera in the ceiling. And it is, as somebody watching that and trying to participate in a meeting, it's difficult. There's only I think yours floating in the background, but there's a couple of staff members whose faces are on the screen, and it's really hard to see if they want to speak, because in order for the camera to capture the entire room, the camera has to be back, and it makes everybody kind of little pea heads. And so when you're watching it, it's difficult. If you didn't know the players, if you were a member of the public watching, and you didn't know voices, it's difficult to figure out who's speaking unless there's some way that your microphone lights up or something. Mike, go ahead.
If I may. So yeah, I realize that is a challenge when you are strictly doing, everybody's attending via Zoom, and then one of the squares here is a kind of a pulled back shot of the council chambers. What I am envisioning is that for people watching from home, they won't actually see that view. So we would flip back, so they would see a full screenshot of the council chambers when councilors are having their discussion room, and then we would flip kind of back and forth to then the Zoom screen, and on the Zoom screen we would just show the delegates. So for people watching from home, they shouldn't run into that issue where it's hard to see which council member is talking, because when a council member is talking, we'll flip back to the full screen view. Now, in terms of for the people actually conducting the meeting, I would agree with your assessment that if you were chairing the meeting remotely, it would be hard, because you would just see the I'll call it the Hollywood Square there with the council chambers, and it might be hard to see somebody raising their hand again if you're chairing remotely. Talking about it at our management meetings at the county, one of the things that we thought we would suggest to council is, if there's a meeting, if we start holding in-person meetings, and if there's a situation where the chair couldn't attend in person, then we would make the recommendation that everybody move back to this style of Zoom meeting, just to make it easier for the chair to chair the meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's my impression from various conversations that, you know, we'll get a start somewhere, and we'll continually refine as we go, and as we get comfortable with different aspects of this new world, and things could change. I mean, we might have meetings where council members are sitting in this room again And maybe after that, it's not too long before, people could come in and watch it. But in the meantime, we still have to figure out the live streaming for people who, there's a half a dozen people out there who are watching us right now just because they're interested in municipal governance and but they're not going to get in their car, and even if they could, and drive and sit in the chambers here. So the accessibility to our business is good. So we'll refine as we go. Councillor Barry, I think, and then Councillor Dayu.
Is the reason we can't Zoom from our own computers and have that put up on the screen or put up live because of audio?
Mike?
So, sorry if I understand the question. Do you mean is the reason you can't Zoom from within the council chambers, have everybody zooming in? There's a potential for feedback. So if you're there and you have it in your mic and speakers going, and then there's the potential that your neighbor's mic will pick up your sound, and then it kind of makes a feedback loop. So if you ever try to do a Zoom meeting with two people in the same room, if you're really close to each other, you can get that echoing feedback, and it makes a mess of the audio, and it becomes difficult to understand anything.
Okay.
Councillor Dayu, and then Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Sort of a follow-up to Lisa's question, because we would all be in the same room, we wouldn't require hearing anything out of our own screens, presumably. And I just wonder if we all, at the beginning of the session, if we all just hit the muted sound, so not muting us speaking in, but the muted sound, so that no one gets a sound out of their own computer, would that help? Because it does feel like we've kind of got a rhythm going with this Zoom thing, and no, it's not perfect, but it's actually pretty darn good. And I've looked at past council meetings that have been streamed on YouTube, and they're pretty darn good. And it would be, if we can use something that works, I think that would be great, especially if it means that we don't have to, we don't have to spend any more money. Yeah, and that way, if there's a participant, if there's a delegate who's being streamed in over Zoom, they just stream in the same way that I'm seeing Carol or Julie or anyone else, and it just flows. And I don't know, I sort of feel like that would be worth an experiment to see if we could make it work.
And we might be able to make that work if we did Zoom delegates now, to just add one more face to the screen. The idea is, I think, long-term, looking at us being reconvened together in this room, not to have to worry about looking here, because you'd be sitting there and I should be talking to you there, not to you here.
But if I may, the way I would see it is, I would open up my computer, I would see that the camera is working, and then I would basically minimize the screens, because I don't need to, as you say, I don't need to see you.
Right, because we're in the same room, yeah.
So I would just be looking at my agenda, at the other documents that I need to reference. Nothing has changed from previous council meetings when we were in person, except for I see a little green light indicating that someone is filming me.
I think Deputy Mayor Danielson was next.
I'm getting mixed messages, but I want to go back to one of the earlier comments that Councillor Dayu made about, do we really need to have delegates, to view delegates? And I think it's important that we do, that we can view them, that they're, depending on what the discussions are, I just think it's important to be able to see the person. Having recently had a committee of adjustment meeting where we had people who called in rather than Zoomed in, it was awkward. And you couldn't, you couldn't see if the person was upset or not. I mean, being able to view someone gives you a lot more information.
Councillor Dayu was next. Councillor Barry, did you have your hand up?
I did.
So we'll go to Lisa and then back to Jen, thanks.
My thought was too, if the green light is on, you can put your agenda on full screen, and like you say, you wouldn't even really know that you're participating in a Zoom other than by the green light. I guess it might alter things with having to deal with volume, unmuting and that type of thing, but.
I think Mr. March has something to say.
If council wanted to go that route, you would have to be very careful about making sure your mics and your volume was muted at all times. If you're, for some reason, if you're brought in and out, you'll of the Zoom session, again, check to make sure that your mic didn't get activated at that time. If everybody has their laptops in and you're viewing here, then you have to decide, is everybody just looking at the screen? And so when you're viewing from home, you'll see it, or will you be like this, talking to your neighbor and maybe getting involved in the conversation, and the next thing you know, I'm kind of out of the screen, or you may not be as cognizant of how that is coming across, how your visual is coming across to people watching from home. Just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, certainly nothing keeps you sitting up straight more than watching yourself on a screen.
That's right. Keep yourself.
Yeah, I think that going back to what I'd said originally, I think that, the important part is that we undertake a course of action that allows us to focus on the business at hand and not have to, play with buttons and make sure things are turned off or turned on. I personally don't mind spending the money to modernize our operations this way. But I think, was Lisa, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wondered, with the system that you're recommending, would it be a face shot or would it be a whole council shot? Because I don't know how much the viewer would see.
It's a room. So the idea would be there'd be a camera in the ceiling, and it would be a shot of the entire chambers with the 5 of us or the 7 of us sitting in it, because this is, imagine we're back in person, the CAO would be here and the clerk would be here as usual. There'd be a camera that has all of us on the screen. So that would be for when we meet, when we meet together. Mike?
And would that cover social distancing?
Go ahead, Mike.
If I may, about the technical aspect of that, for viewers, for people attending via your Zoom meeting, then yes, you're going to see kind of one of these squares will be a shot of the entire council chambers, and depending on whether or not there is one delegate on with the council shot, or if there's 5, yeah, it could potentially make it smaller and smaller, just like it's, my image would be bigger if there was just the 2 of us, and it gets smaller if there's 12 of us. But for people viewing from home, again, it's going to be a little different, because we're not going to be doing the streaming through Zoom. We're going to do streaming through a third-party product that will we can bounce back between shots. So one shot would just be the entire council chambers, and that's all the people from home see. And when it's big on the screen, it's a little easier to see the participants. And then when somebody is participating or speaking on the Zoom delegation, we could flip back to that shot so that people from home are just seeing the Zoom screen with everybody on there.
I think Councillor Day, you had her hand up next, and then Liz.
Yeah, just to respond to Liz's point, Liz, I completely agree with you. I think seeing faces are far superior. And since I made that comment, I've had greater clarity from this conversation. Before, I thought that we were all going to be watching the delegate on our own computers, and that the only way that the people in attendance could also see the delegate is if we went through these, machinations of getting us and them on the screen, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, does it really matter that someone in the audience sees that individual when they can go onto YouTube later and see the live stream as it was recorded and see what the faces were, et cetera, et cetera. But now I understand more about what is being proposed, which I clearly misunderstood. So it's a bit moot. On whole, I do agree with your comment, though. Faces are better.
Liz, over to you.
So, and this is kind of maybe a silly question, but so all the audience would see front view of faces would be yourself, the clerk, and the CAO, and the rest of us would all be side views.
Well, yeah, similar to the meetings we've seen, the county council chambers on the rail trail meetings, and so when Craig and Amanda are sitting at the head, anybody who's sitting on the side, yeah, it would be you'd be seeing somebody sort of side view. Because it's capturing the whole room.
Yeah.
But I think it's far enough back that it allows for more of a three-quarter view, because again, so much of communication is in facial expression, and it's important, as you've both said, or some of you have said, to see people. It is difficult to capture a room and have the little faces we're used to now, which are right in front of us on the screen. So anyway, we're looking for options from 1, 2, or 3. The IT director is proposing 3 as being the easiest, and I personally would like to have what is simplest for council so that we can focus on the business. And I'm not overly concerned with the additional costs. We do have modernization money, and this is definitely a step toward modernization of business practices. So are there like more questions, more conversation you want to have, or do you want to get down to picking a route to go? Angie, did you want to weigh in here?
I just wanted to sort of clarify. Councillor Berry had a comment or a question there about social distancing, and I just wanted to clarify that this process, we're just getting ready for when it's safe for council to be in the council chamber again. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, so there's no plan for council to implement this live streaming system and then start coming to the office. No. Councillor Berry.
I guess my thought was that should be considered in the recording of a council meeting. Like if people can't be like the mayor, the clerk, the CAO beside one another, does that change how this proposal would even work?
Well, it wouldn't because the proposal is aimed at for when things are back to regular business practices. It's simply a way to continue to live stream meetings for public consumption. If there's any challenges with health and safety as regards the pandemic, we'll continue to meet via Zoom, which I believe is the medium-term goal at the moment anyway. I mean, it could also be argued, I mean, it's a good conversation to have. Zoom's working fine for us right now, and as Jen had said, and we can, it's not as though there's going to be a camera system with microphones installed next week because we're all still at home. I'm not, but we have to get ready for it because the public is enjoying watching the meetings and seeing exactly what's being discussed and how. So this is meant to accommodate the longer term accessibility of our business to the public, notwithstanding the challenges we face at the moment with COVID, which are being handled. So. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I think that we should just proceed with option 3 as recommended by Mr. March, and I mean obviously there's going to be an adjustment period for us all to get used to it, but I suspect after some period of time we won't even think about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, when we first started going to the Zoom meetings, I can tell you personally, I thought, you know, the live streaming, I didn't like that so much, and you know, but there's some interesting feedback from people, and we're all used to it now. And as has been said, we'll get used to it. My final question though for Mr. March and Ms. Bird. So right now, I've said this before, in the council chambers right now, there are 3 staff members, 1 county IT person and 2 Algonquin Highlands staff persons who are running the technology aspect of this. So Mike, going forward, who runs this system? Who's the Wizard of Oz pressing all the levers as we go forward? And what implications are there for staff?
So if I may, I think we'll always at least have one, and that'll likely be an IT person. If we call it, we are getting at least a 2-year temporary IT person that we're recruiting for now, and that was a decision county council made when we presented the decisions. Do you want IT to keep continuing having a hands-on role, or did you want to train some staff to kind of do it themselves? County council felt that there was a benefit having IT there, so IT will be going forward. We may need 1 other staff, so I'm thinking maybe 2 altogether. But I kind of want to preface this by saying, yeah, that this is a learning experience for everybody, and things may shift and change as it goes forward. But 1 person definitely, and maybe even 2.
Councillor Dayu, and then CAO Bird.
I still feel that seeing individual faces like we are seeing now is a more effective means of communicating even to the general public who are watching than seeing tiny little heads, in the distance scattered around a room. And I believe that I would prefer to try using Zoom from our personal computers as we're sitting in council chambers to see if we can do away with some of the risks of the feedback loops and all of those things first, before we spend money on equipment. But I realize that if the modernization money has to be spent before we get back into council chambers and we don't have time to do that kind of experimentation, then let's go ahead with option 3. But my personal feeling would be, let's give it a shot using Zoom on our personal computers in council chambers before we make that expenditure.
I see your hand, Lisa. I'm just going to ask a follow-up question on that, on Councillor Dayu's comments to Mr. March. If council decided that it wanted to do that, because really, it is kind of nice having your faces right there. You can see faces, expressions, and whatnot far more easily than you can from an eye in the sky. Are there any Zoom-related security or technology challenges in continuing to use Zoom in this manner, Mr. March?
Are you thinking that you would do away with the microphones as well and just have everybody there with just basically your laptops and the Zoom and give that a try, and just not have any of the equipment?
I think that's what Jen's saying, are you not, Jen? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would be doing exactly what we're doing now, except we would all be in the council chambers.
Then we would need
You need a microphone of some sort.
There would need to be either one microphone picking everybody's sound up, or everybody would have to wear headsets. Because again, if you have your mic going on your laptop, Mayor Moffat, your mic's going to pick up your neighbor's sound. So there either needs just to be one microphone source, or everybody has headsets. And then we would have to test and make sure that if we get special unidirectional microphones, then maybe it won't pick up your neighbors, but you're sitting there with your earpiece and your headsets. You could have one microphone sitting in the middle, kind of like what you're doing now. But again, you're going to pick up any sounds. So if your neighbor's shuffling their papers, clicking their pen, somebody rolls up into the parking lot, you may pick up those sounds as well. Whereas the microphone system on here has unidirectional mics, hit on, hit off. You don't have to worry about the background. So just a couple of things to consider.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we do know from having sat in here for a long time, there's only been 2 or 3 people this morning come for water, but in the summertime when it's really busy, there is so much traffic out here for the public water tap, and it can be very, very noisy, and it's distracting as well. So that's, the last thing you want is everybody in the world hearing all the people getting their water. I saw some hands. I saw Lisa's hand and Liz's. I think Liz is first. Oh, and Angie's in there too.
We'll let Andy go first.
Madam CAO, what say ye?
I was a couple of things. Just going to comment on we've sat in conference calls in the council chamber a number of times with our device in the middle, and that becomes difficult sometimes for the person on the other end to hear, or anyone in the room to hear properly. So that concerns me that may become the same situation. And I was just going to comment on the number of staff. We have 2 staff right now in the room with the mayor, and we do have a backup person trained as well. So right now we have 3 staff persons that could jump in where needed.
Yeah, that's good. That cross training is very important. Liz.
I do like what Councillor Dayu is saying about face on view for everybody to see. I like that better than the distance view. You and I have both had an opportunity to see what it's like viewing the county council chambers, and it's hard to see people at all. And I mean, you can hear them. I'm just kind of wondering if there isn't, referring to what Angie said about the device that we've used for conference calls. I think that there's probably something more sophisticated than that, as far as a microphone. Say if we were going to solely go with a microphone that would be more sensitive to picking up sounds than what we've been using so far. This is more
So
complicated than we thought it would be.
I know, you know what, look, we, just because we have modernization money, just because we have free money, doesn't mean we don't throw it around. We want to make sure we make the right decision for the right reasons. I don't believe there's a deadline on the modernization money, is there, Angie?
No, there isn't. And hearing what council's saying, I'm wondering if maybe we as staff can take this away and maybe do some experimenting and bring it back for some recommendations to council.
Lisa Berry. Yes, Angie, I think that's probably the best idea, because I was going to say, can we explore a bit of a hybrid, which I think you're suggesting as well. Lisa Berry, go ahead, please.
Just thinking, you know, pre-Zoom and pre-pandemic, I think it was definitely evident that just for accessibility, there would be a need for audio and for people that are in the chamber to hear what council is saying. If you're at the back of the room, I'm not sure how clear everyone's voices are, because we're directing our voices at the mayor, not at the back of the room. And the same for the assisted listening device. If there was someone in there that needed that, I think that maybe some of this, if it didn't fit in modernization, maybe some of it could be in accessibility. I don't know. We did talk about seeing that screen behind Carol at the back of the room, maybe for the agenda, and that isn't useful for the public.
Yeah, and you'll, the longer standing members of council will recall when members of the Aging Well Committee did an audit of Algonquin Highlands, and that's one of the things that was mentioned is when we're all sitting here in this little group talking, even though this is not a very big room, there were some challenges with some folks who have hearing difficulties, even in this small room. So when and if the time comes, the assisted listening device is definitely something we should be looking at. It's already been recommended to us by members of the public who needed it. So I think that's a bit of a gimme.
Okay.
In that respect.
I just didn't see it as an option.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Angie and Mike, is that, do you have enough? I mean, we've talked around and around and around and tossed lots of things on the table. It looks like council's looking for a bit of a hybrid opportunity, and maybe before we spend hard dollars, notwithstanding that there is no deadline. The fact that there's no deadline for the modernization money stands in our favor.
Mm-hmm.
So can you take that away and maybe come up with something from what you've heard today?
Yeah, I think we can, sure.
And is council okay with that? Because there was lots of good conversation on that. Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads. So we will receive the report, but there will not be a choice made because it will come back. So the clerk is recrafting, drawing lines through things. Is there anything further on this conversation today? Councillor Dayoud.
Would it be prudent to go ahead and just approve purchase of assisted listening device, considering it's been acknowledged that regardless of what happens, that would be a good thing to have, or should that only come in with the final package?
I mean, we don't, I would think it would come in with the final package because we don't need it right now. No one's in here that needs it. So I mean, even if we bought it today, it would sit in a shelf for 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. We have no idea. Yeah. Mike.
If I may, and I apologize if this wasn't clear in the report, the assisted listening device works with the microphone system. So you'd have to purchase the microphone system to use this assisted listening device.
Got it.
Okay. So, all right, well, you'll take that away and see if there's a desirable hybrid system that suits what everyone's looking for in terms of providing the best access for the public and ease of use for ourselves. So may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council receives report CO 1320 regarding meeting live streaming equipment submitted by Don Newhook and Mike March, dated November 5th, 2020, and the council defers its decision pending further options and information.
You've heard that. All in favor? And that is carried. Mr. March, thank you very much for your work on this. Sorry to make more for you.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
Mr. March will leave us now. We'll move along. Building bylaw. So we don't have a lot of department reports. They usually come in the second meeting, and there's some people on holidays and some other projects are being worked on that are big, exciting projects. We have one item for Public Works, and that's regarding the HVAC upgrade for the Dorset Recreation Center, and we will bring in Mr. Thorne. Everybody just moved on the screen. You're all in a different place now. There he is. Good morning, Mr. Thorne.
Good morning, everyone.
Would you be so kind to take us through the work you've done on the HVAC possibilities for the Dorset Rec Center, and maybe we can work on getting that back open to the public?
Yes, of course. So this was a collaboration between a couple staff members here, putting this together and trying to get this community center open as soon as possible. So we did reach out to a mechanical engineer that came and looked at the building and offered up these 3 options to get us open as soon as possible. So as the report indicates, that option 3, part 1, is the option that staff is recommending currently. This would get the community center up and running, and also allow for further down the road for us to, if we wanted to install a heating cooling type system in there, that we would have that option down the road. So it gives us a little bit more maneuverability, if you will, with the HVAC system. I think before I move on, is there any questions regarding this type of system or what this would offer?
Questions from council on any clarifications for the systems as they've been outlined? I think that the explanations have been fairly clear. But are there any questions? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Well, my question is not a technical one about the systems, but rather more about financing. Did you want to wait on that, or could I ask that now?
What do you have next? Where are you going next, Adam? Do you want?
Yeah, of course. It's okay. So I was just going to jump right into the finance portion afterwards. It's just I didn't want to get too far in and then have to come back to the technical part of it. But if there's no questions regarding the technical portion of it, then we'll just jump right into it. So yes, the funding portion of it, and I have the report here in front of me, is that we did look at a couple options and a couple great options for us to help out. But if we do decide to go with one of the options, it looks like we might not have the ability to get open until mid to late 2021. Unfortunately, it's just the way that those kind of grant fundings roll out, that we won't know if we're accepted until later on mid-season. So as the recommendation in the report asks, is that we utilize the ICIP COVID funding and to support this project, which potentially could get us up running a lot sooner.
Yeah, I mean, that money coming in is definitely of assistance here. Liz, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. I guess my thinking is that we go ahead completely with both part 1 and part 2 of the third option. I know that we had talked about, I think it was at our last meeting, we talked about using the COVID money against this project. We've recently received another $100,000. And I was thinking, because I'm afraid that we're going to have more coming at us from the province than that we even dream about right now. That I would like to see the system get in place, and for, rather than put it up against competing projects next year. I'd just like to get it in place and let people start using the facility completely.
I have to say, I don't disagree. Councillor Dayu.
There was an article in the CBC News just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, about the upgrading of the Canadian public health guidelines for COVID-19 and how aerosols are more of an important element of those guidelines than they previously were, and that ventilation systems that limit air recirculation is increased in its importance within those guidelines. So when I read the 3 options and listen to what Mr. Thorns had to say, I would say option 3 is very much in line with where Canada is right now in its guidelines, and I would vote for option 3.
And option 3, Jen, only part 1, or as Liz is suggesting, the whole shebang?
I concur with Liz. I think the whole shebang.
Were there other hands there? Councillor Shortreed.
Adam, is part 2 necessary? Will it ever be a requirement, or is it just an option that's not necessary?
So option 3, part 2. Let's see here, heating, and yes. So what we can do is, if we did go into that, we would start looking at the heating of the building. Now, currently the building is electric baseboard. So when we start putting in an option like this, we would be removing that electric baseboard, which is, as we know, not that energy efficient. So it would increase the energy efficiency of the building. Also, it would allow, as things open back up, when we get back into, let's call it regular life, and we're having events there, having the ability to have separate controls in each room for heating and cooling is like night and day compared to a building that would be one heat control for the entire building. And as you can imagine, if you had 50 people in the gymnasium doing a sport, you want to cool that room down. But in an office space downstairs where you have maybe, only 5 people having some kind of a meeting, they would be freezing. So it definitely helps moving forward. If we did do all of option 1, we would definitely see the savings doing the project all in one rather than spacing it out. We would see cost savings in our energy use for the building. And, we would also see more, it would be user friendly.
I would say, based on all of those things, it's a bit of a no-brainer for which way to go. Councillor Barry and I sat for years going over the weekly accounts, and the electricity bill for the Dorset Rec Centre was something that weighed heavily on us, and it has for a long time. And we, as a council, have made a commitment to seek more energy-efficient options and in the work that we do and any capital investments. And based on what Adam has just said, it sounds to me that the whole shebang, as we've decided to call it, or I've decided to call it, would address all of those things, as well as providing the most useful and safe environment for people to get out and get active again. We know from our trail system, and we just know from the world, that physical activity is on the rise as people are seeking ways to keep busy. We are anticipating an extremely busy trails season in the winter with snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. And there's a lot of people who are, especially season account holders, are anxious to get back into the rec center as the weather closes in. So, any other thoughts? Any opposing views on that, or we're all? I've heard from 3 folks who are interested in sort of just going ahead with the whole thing. Angie Bird, any thoughts on tying up money that we shouldn't tie up from certain accounts at this time?
No, I don't, but we may need to bring back a recommendation on where the balance is coming from, whether it be modernization or from reserves.
And we do know that we do have those reports coming forward anyway, that were coming, the modernization summary as well as the COVID summary. This $100,000 is a bonus, so maybe that could be folded into that report. So we could defer a decision until that report comes back, if council would like, or we could just accept it, say we're going to go do the whole shebang and then find the money after. Angie, what do you say about that?
That's what I would recommend. And I do recommend that council go with the whole thing. Adam's absolutely correct. It'll save money in the long run, having to come back and do the second part of the project. I'll talk to Jeannie and that will come back. The recommendation on where the second part of the funds come from will be contained in that report at the next meeting.
Okay, and does that suffice for council? I see some hands. Do you have more comments, Lisa Berry or Liz Danielson? Lisa Berry. You're on mute.
Sorry, I support going forward with the whole thing as well, especially when the facility is closed right now. It's sort of an excellent opportunity to do the work while we can. rather than try and do half of it now, be partially open, and then how do you do that down the road?
Yeah, excellent thought. Liz, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, no, I'm just glad to see us going ahead with it.
Okay, good. Well, I think that sums that up. So we will, I don't think the resolution is going to say the whole shebang. But it could, just because we could be those people if we wanted to. So we'll do that, and then we'll see the report of how it's going to be financed in detail coming forward. Is that sufficient? May I have a mover and a seconder to move this forward? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 5220, Dorset Recreation Center HVAC upgrades and ICIP COVID-19 resiliency stream funding opportunity submitted by Adam Thorne and Chris Card, dated November 5th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendation that option 3, part 1 and part 2 would be the most suitable option, and further that council hereby concurs with the recommendation to apply the ICIP COVID-19 resiliency stream funding to the HVAC upgrades at the Dorset Recreation Center.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Adam. That's this will take us a good step forward in getting that facility open safely for the public again.
Thank you.
Moving on the agenda, none. In terms of external boards, I had one comment under section E for the Policing Advisory Committee. The Policing Advisory Committee a number of months ago agreed to go on a hiatus while the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, which has been legislated by the province, be developed and implemented at the county level. And there's a steering committee. There's a doodle poll running around right now for those people for a November meeting. So once that comes forward, there'll be a little bit more to report on, because it does affect all 4 municipalities. But at the moment, just to let you know that the RFP to develop the safety and well-being plan for the county and for all 4 municipalities is out, and we'll be meeting soon to review those submissions. So that's just your update there. I don't think there's anything for library, but Madam Warden, did you want to comment on yesterday's big announcement? It's not exactly EORN, but it's sort of EORN.
Yeah, it is. It is sort of EORN. So I'm sure that everybody is aware now that there was an announcement made in the county by the Premier, who was here visiting, about an absolutely extraordinary allocation of funding for broadband. And I'm sure that will include Halliburton. I don't have the details of that. But a commitment of that sort coming from the province is rather extraordinary. They're obviously giving the appropriate attention to the greater need for broadband, particularly in rural Ontario. So it's really heartening to see that commitment made. The whole thing about no matter how good news it is, we're still going to have to wait. It'll be a couple of years, and that's the hard part, that we need to put out RFPs and get the work underway.
Yeah, there certainly is lots of community conversation regarding the pros and cons of the existing projects that are underway or partially underway compared to Elon Musk's satellite-based system. So there's robust discussion in the community on that, but we'll get there eventually.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. Under number 16, general business, this was added. This is asking for a proclamation to support local business. As council knows, we don't do proclamations, but I would like to ask for council's discretion on this because it's extenuating circumstances. And I can tell you that I was picking up a package at a post office yesterday, and they can't move for the Amazon boxes. And I think it's very, very important to encourage people to, put on your mask and get out in town and buy some things locally. So I'm hoping that council will support this, and just that it is under extenuating circumstances to encourage support of local business during the pandemic. Any thoughts on anything contrary to that? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Fully supportive of that suggestion.
Excellent. Any other thoughts or comments from members of council? Okay, well then we will happily support. This will be like the first ever proclamation we've done, but it's for good cause. So yeah. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Berry and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council receives correspondence from the Algonquin Highlands Chamber of Commerce regarding the Buy Close By Season project, and further council supports in principle the project dating from November 15th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 for the 2020 Christmas season.
All in favor?
Could I ask a question?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes.
So what are we going, other than making a proclamation, what else are we actually going to do? Are we going to put something on our website, or is there any promotion that we're planning on doing to go along with this?
I would assume that it would go on our news and notices, and we could maybe get something on the website. I confess I hadn't thought that far ahead. We can certainly put it on our individual social media channels. I'm sure that staff could put together like a little meme or a little flyer or something for us, or perhaps the chamber has that already created, and we could just make sure we get that out there. I'm going to go to the CAO because she may have some insight.
One thing I'd like to do is ask the other municipalities what they're planning to do, if they are supporting it and what they are doing. But one of the things that I did think of was, you know, even something simple like doing the hashtag Buy Close By, you know, in our email, at the bottom of our email. Just things like that. But I mean, staff, we can talk about it and come up with something, but certainly website, all the normal channels for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult when you don't have, we have half of the town. So it's difficult to find innovative ways to support a couple of small businesses, but there are anchors in our community in the half of the town that we have jurisdiction over. There's a couple of hands up there. I'm going to go to Councillor Dayu first, and then Deputy Mayor Danielson.
We indeed have half of a town, and the other half of the town is within the jurisdiction of a municipality that does have a bit of resources to support local businesses in this way, and has been working for the past number of months on that. So it would also be appropriate, Madam CAO, as you look at what everyone else in the county is doing, that we also maybe chat to Lake of Bays to support our shared community with shared resources in that sense.
Yeah, excellent. And I know certainly on a completely different topic, but in terms of collaborative efforts, there's concern right across the province in the face of COVID with being able to ensure consistency in winter plowing operations. And so Lake of Bays has reached out to us on an initiative in that regard. So we have been working very hard over the last year or so to make sure that we stay in better touch with them around this kind of thing. So that's a good suggestion. Okay, we have the resolution out. I will call the vote. All in favor of that? We have another question?
Hang on. I had my hand up earlier and wanted to make a comment before we have a vote.
Okay.
I'm assuming that this is not just a proclamation associated with Algonquin Highlands, that it would be, shopping local includes the whole county, because a lot of us will, I mean, it's Minden and Haliburton, and it's all 4 municipalities, not just half a community. And the other thing was that the rationale behind my saying, what are we going to do about this, is that I've always felt and I think it was one of the reasons why we don't do proclamations, because when you make a proclamation, you really should be prepared to do something about it. And that's why I feel strongly that I like Angie's idea about the hashtag and anything else that you can come up with in staff deliberations.
Yeah, and just to circle back on, to clarify, when I was commenting that we really only have half town within our jurisdiction, that we should support this countywide initiative, notwithstanding that we only have half of the town. So you're absolutely right. It's about all of us coming together to support at a time when it's needed the most. Okay, so well taken. And any further questions, comments, thoughts? You've heard the resolution. All in favor?
Did we hear the resolution?
Yes. Would you like it read again?
I would, I'm sorry. I totally,
Well, you were so busy sticking your hand up in the air and asking all those questions that you've all forgotten it. Madam Clerk, would you read the resolution again, please?
Yes, moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dennison. Be it resolved, Council receives correspondence from the Algonquin Highlands Chamber of Commerce regarding the Buy Post Buy Season project, and further Council supports in principle the project dating from November 15th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 for the 2020 Christmas season.
All in favor? Thank you. Next up is correspondence. Was anything moved? I wanted to ask, circle back and ask if council wanted to take a second look at the Lake of Bays letter regarding insurance. I thought there were some interesting points raised in that. Would you just tell council what you told me in that email you sent about Lake of Bays? So you had an email from Carrie?
Yes, I followed up with the clerk when I received the correspondence, and the clerk had indicated that due to the ever increasing costs in the insurance, and if council, Algonquin Highlands Council, was in the same opinion and wanted to support a reform, requesting a reform to the municipal insurance policy, then that would be their seeking support.
Mm-hmm. And the reasons that they've outlined, they make sense. And we are seeing every meeting I get my chance to say the community is changing. You know, a lot more people here, a lot more people staying here, living here, different kinds of people. And I think some of the comments made in the Lake of Bays letter are not wrong in terms of opportunities for people to seek different outcomes in terms of insurance and litigation. So if there's any member of council that's interested in supporting that, we could do that now. And if not, that's fine. We did have a request from Lake of Bays to support it. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'd be more than willing to support it. My only hesitation is that, you know, how many times has during Roma and AMO the issue of joint and several liability been brought up, and there's, you know, I don't have any great hopes that the province will do anything about it. But let's give it a shot.
So are you willing to move that?
Yes.
Is there anybody, and remember, nobody has to. Is there anybody interested in seconding that to move that forward? Some latecomers to the table. Councillor Shortreed has indicated that she's willing to do that. Yeah, joint and several is kind of the bane of municipal existence and has been ongoing for so long. Perhaps though it's a little bit of chain rattling that could assist.
Can I just get a mover and a second?
Oh, mover and a seconder to accept the correspondence report. Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, the council receives the correspondence listing for the period of October 9th, 2020 to October 28th, 2020 for information.
All in favor? It's carried.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council supports the Township of Lake of Bays requesting a reform to the municipal insurance policy, and further a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, MPP Laurie Scott, and AMO.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you for that. So that concludes the open portion of today's meeting. You know, I thought it was going to be a lot quicker than that. We had some really good, robust discussion on some important topics. So thank you for that. So we will take a brief break. It's okay.
Move into close.
Yes, we have a mover and a seconder to move into close, and then we'll have a break while that moving happens. Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council hereby adjourns its open session at 10:17 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, in accordance with Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, employee performance review.
All in favor? That is carried. So we'll take a break while before we settle into closed. So we'll see your lovely faces back on the screen for 10:30. That's okay. Thanks, everybody.
session.
Oh, we're on. Okay, we are reconvened. I would like a resolution, a mover and a seconder to come out of closed session, please. Councillor Shortreed. I need a seconder, please, to come out of closed. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Jameson, be it resolved that council adjourns its closed session at 3:31 p.m. and open session resumed.
All in favor? I believe there's a lag for Councillor Dayu, so we'll have to just keep an eye on that. That is carried. May I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? I'm going to go with Councillor Shortreed, and I think Councillor Dayu had her hand up. There you go.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu, be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2020-93 being a bylaw to adopt a video surveillance policy, and bylaw 2020-94 being a bylaw to adopt an IT acceptable usage policy.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Confirmatory bylaw. May I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson, be it resolved that bylaw 2020-95 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its November 5th, 2020 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That is carried. There we go. Third hand up. That's carried. You've got quite a long delay there, Jen, but that's okay. We're waiting for you. May I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment of the meeting? And I'm going to take Jen's hand still in the air, I think. Maybe
She's frozen.
I'm going to go with Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that the November 5th, 2020 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 3:33 p.m.
All in favor? So Jen's frozen, so I can put my hand up and that's carried. There you go, three of us. That's carried. Thank you, ladies. Jen, oh, Jen's back, but we carried on without you and the meeting is now adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
And thanks, Angie.
Thank you, Council.